Billions of dollars from the Saudi Arabian government now flowing into the coffers for the PGA Tour and the golfers there. Pete, I'm going to let you go first on this because I'm steaming right now. I am about as fried and as pissed off as I could possibly be. This is one of those issues that comes right alongside of thoroughbred horse racing for me, is this whole live golf and sports washing. So I'll let you get the first take on this.
Well, I'm not going to get in a big scream fest about it like we did a couple of weeks ago about blood money in sports because it can apply to
It's going to
everything. So,
happen.
look, it's good for the game of golf. It's unfortunate it has come to this. I think what's happened is a good thing. I think any golf fan will agree. And it's kind of like it was only a matter of time. This all could have been avoided about a decade ago if Jay Monahan and others at the PGA, Commissioner Jay Monahan and others, had just listened to people like Phil Mickelson. I'm not a huge Phil Mickelson guy. I'm a big golf guy. I'm not a huge Mickelson guy. But he was absolutely correct. He and others who were trying to say, look, we gotta do some things that are a little bit we gotta evolve here a little bit. And it wasn't. I don't think they were asking for at the time a lot of extra accommodations. They just wanted, fair and equal sort of pay, if you will. That was part of it. And it went on deaf ears. It all got swept under the rug. And now, Live Golf comes along. All of a sudden, after even 2-3 tournaments, PGA Tour starts to be proactive. They start reacting to things that Mickelson and others have been saying for the last decade, like expanding guys' pay that finished at the bottom. I mean, the guy who finishes last in Live makes $150,000. The guy who finishes last on the PGA Tour can barely afford to fly home, at 15 grand on the whole. So look, we can get into a little bit more. I think it's a good thing for golf. You got to consider the Ryder Cup people and all of this. It's going to be really interesting to see. The one thing I'm interested in to see when guys like Brooks Koepka and Justin Johnson are going to be able to reapply for the PGA and that whole process. But this is a good thing for golf. I don't know how anybody.
I'm going to agree with you on the good thing for golf. And again, there's two separate entities here. There is the game and the sports washing aspect, which we'll get to momentarily. Chris, your take, go.
There's a few things that come to mind. First of all, I agree with you, Pete. And again, I think it's important to divide the two. As Ed said, look, I have no problem with this when it comes to something specific to the game of golf. I think it's fantastic for the game of golf. And I think the more people you get into that tent, the better. I think I have a problem with where the money is coming from. And I think Ed's going to get to that a little bit later on. The other thing, too, is that, look, you heard the report there initially. There's a lot of conversations that have to happen between here and when they all get in the same room. I'm not going to call this a slam dunk quite yet. I don't know if this is going to be the kind of thing that's going to play out over a number of months, a number of years, whatever the case may be. Then the third thing is, look, what are they saying, all the president's men? Follow the money. This is all about the money. This is all about making more money. And that's what I always come back to at the end of the day. When it comes to professional sports, every single decision is based around how to squeeze every single nickel out of every single fan. So look, I think at the end of the day, this is good for sports and it's good for golf. But again, and I think Ed's going to lean into this here, where the money is coming from, that's where I have the problem.
Just real quick, the only thing that's where the money is not going to go, and I think it's a good thing, is to the lawyers who lose out on all these big lawsuits, that were going to happen.
Well, first of all, the money going to the lawyers is about 1% of 1% of 1% when you're talking about Saudi Arabian money and PGA Tour money, which has squirreled away millions and billions over the years. So nobody gives a shit about where the money is coming from and where it's going to the lawyers here. My problem is this. Yes, it's good for golf. It's good for the sport of golf. It puts everybody together and stops all the incessant bullshit arguing back and forth and stops the lawsuits. This is blood money coming from the Saudi Arabian government, who has used sports as nothing more than a sports washing entity to try and burnish up their image, make everybody think they're wonderful and happy. Meantime, they torture people in Saudi Arabia. They kill journalists. They keep women from getting educations. Anybody who's LGBTQ or any alternative lifestyle is beaten and killed in Saudi Arabia. If you don't follow their religion and their government, if you will, their propped up government, you are subject to being killed, maimed, tortured. Your life is changed. This is disgusting and despicable for the PGA Tour, who now is going to cash billions of dollars that is nothing more than blood money. Why? So a bunch of rich white guys can sit on a freaking golf course and chase a little white ball around. I don't care. Good for golf, I'll give you that much. But God damn it, I'm tired of the sports washing, and I'm tired of the fact that Saudi money is being used to back this. That's my take on it, Pete. I know you and I are going to go with this, and I know you're going to say that others do it. I don't care. This is the one I'm focusing on.
I am going to say that because but Ed, I appreciate your passion, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but if you dig deep, I mean, FIFA shouldn't even be allowed. You start digging deep into every single sports entity, and you will find blood money, Ed. You will find it. You will find it everywhere. We wouldn't have any more sports to watch.
But
you can go to every single league in the world and find blood money.
You got to start somewhere, Pete. You got to start somewhere.
What are you going to do, Ed?
Then let's start here. This is avoidable.
Don't watch.
This is avoidable, Pete. You don't have to take their money. The PGA Tour can make millions and billions on their own with all their sponsors and worldwide entities, but you're taking the blood money. I'm not saying, look, you're right about FIFA. You're right about thoroughbred horse racing as well, which is nothing more than a blood sport in America where they kill I'd put
the Olympics in there as well, quite honestly.
You're exactly right. The IOC.
What about the NBA and the relationship with China? What about NBA and the relationship with China?
Let's start here. Let's just let focus right here. Just here. Let's not talk NBA. Let's not talk anything else.
Why didn't you have this outrage when the NBA was doing all this business with China?
I did. For years, I've had the same outrage about dealing with China. For years, I've talked about the IOC. For years, I've talked about the USOC and FIFA and the blood money that's involved there. Yes, I am consistent on it. What I'm saying is this is avoidable. This didn't have to be done, Pete. You could still make your money and the game of golf could move forward without taking Saudi blood money. That's my
There's a long-time NFL observer that I spoke with a few years ago who said that, look, if you want to succeed in the National Football League, at some point you're going to have to shake hands with the devil, even a little bit. You know, you're going to have to make a deal with yourself that you might not be completely comfortable with. And I think that applies here in this case. Look, I'm with you, Ed. I think, look, if this money came from I don't want to say anywhere else, but let's say this money came from the networks. Let's say this money came from ESPN. Let's say this money came from some other entity. As a journalist, I have a problem with where the money is coming from. And Pete, I get it. I get what you're saying completely.
I do too.
Across the board, there's a ton of people out there. There's a ton of organizations out there that have blood on their hands, or at least, either real or metaphorical blood on their hands. I think the PGA should be better than this in this situation.
That's my only point. The PGA could and should be better, Pete. And again, I give you everything you said about all the entities, and you are right. I will speak about them as well at any given time. This doesn't have to happen, and the game of golf in America and around the world can get along just fine without the money that is brought about by a government who executes people for being gay, for being a different race, for being a different sex, for not getting involved in their religion. They kill them, and they do it regularly. I'll share this real quick, and then we can go on if you want, but I have a very good friend of mine. His daughter was beaten incessantly by the Saudis for trying to get an education. She escaped after 10 years of torture, and she is now living in a different location. She's out of the Saudi Arabian government sphere of influence. She has told me about the beating she received simply for wanting to get an education. If I'm a member of the PGA Tour and a fan, I don't want my sport polluted by that money. Can't we try to be a little bit better?
Well, and look, all valid points, Ed. Obviously, those are heartbreaking and heinous stories. And look, Jay Monahan is going to have tough questions to answer over the next, probably this week, at some point. And going into, another major coming up, the U.S. Open is coming up. The Open in UK is coming up. So, look. He's going to have to answer everything you just brought up. I'm sure is going to be brought up to him, and let's see how he tiptoes around it, or to your point, justifies it to help that makes PGA Tour better.
I just want somebody to do that. I want somebody at the press conference to ask Jay Monahan, and I wonder if they're going to have the guts in the Open to ask him.
They will. Now,
I want to know if there's a player out there. I want to know, and you guys are far more attuned to the golf world than I am. I want to know if there's a player out there. Is there someone who's going to stand up and say, look, I don't like this. I don't like the idea of bringing everybody into the look. They're fans. They like the idea of bringing everybody into the tent, but they have a problem with where the money is coming from.
Well,
I don't think they'll do it, Chris. I don't.
Greg Norman, who's running Live Golf, he's going to have to, there'll be tough questions for him, as there have been already in the past about all the stuff you guys just brought up. And then also, I remember the first Live Golf press conference. There was an issue. There were questions there that were, you weren't allowed to ask certain things about the Saudi government. There were like big bouncers there throwing people out. Or ready to throw people out. So, that's not going to happen on the PGA Tour in a press conference. But Jay Monahan,
I'm not so sure. Pete, I'm not so sure. I've been to a lot of PGA events, and I'm not so sure that if somebody starts to ask questions about LIV and the Saudi government, if they'll get away with it in that moment, but then they will be banned or they will be tossed out from future press conferences.
I don't think they can do that here. I don't think they could do that at a PGA event here, Ed, because this is too many. Not in this day and age. Jay Monahan would look like a fool, and he can't do it. They're not going to give out a memo saying what you can and can't ask. Not going to happen. Even if they did, people like Chris and myself, we're not going to abide by that. We're going to ask the question, and if they're afraid to answer it, even if they dilly-dally and tiptoe around it, or give All the President's Men non-denial denials. One of my favorite movies, by the way. At least
and a great line.
At least there's somewhat of knowledge. If some PR guy says, "Oh no, we're not doing this," then that's a big cover up, and that's a big. They look like fools. I don't see that happening.
I do, and Chris, this comes down to those of us who try to cover things on a journalistically correct basis. If you get that, I've been at PGA press conferences before, a long time ago, but I've been there where they've said where questions have started to be asked about personal items, and they cut it off. Okay, that's personal. And I get that. You don't want to get into this. But I want one reporter somewhere to stand and say, how do you feel about taking money from a government that executes journalists? That's all. Ask that question. And then I want to see what the answer is. And I think
there's some really good golf writers out there, including Alan Shipnuck, who I have complete faith that those questions will be asked of the PGA leadership sooner rather than later. So as Pete said, look, you got a big event coming up. You got another major coming up. There's going to be a big spotlight on the PGA Tour, and I think there are going to be some real questions out there for him.
Alan's one of the guys. Alan's one. He's got. Who did he write? Phil's book. Alan is one of those guys that got told to leave at a LIV Golf press conference. He's one of those guys that was spoken to.
Let's see, and let's hope that somebody actually has the balls to stand up and ask the question.